Joining me now here in Philadelphia, we have CBS News senior political editor Steve Chaggaris, CBSN political contributor, Republican strategist Leslie Sanchez, and Donald Trump surrogate Omarosa Manigault, good enough to join us as well. Omarosa, thank you for being here.
Glad to be here.
I know you've been here now throughout the week,
Yes.
leading into day two. What have been your impressions thus far here in Philadelphia?
I have just been struck by how divided this party is. I mean, everybody's talking about this unity effort. It's not really working. And you saw that last night, even during the prayer, during the invocation when Cynthia was talking. The Bernie folks were still expressing how frustrated they are with this party, even throughout the invocation.
Now, we did, though, see a second hour. Michelle Obama did speak. She was met by rapturous applause throughout this hall. And there was an inflection point in Bernie Sanders' speech to close the evening last night when he said Hillary Clinton must become the next president of the United States. It was also met with applause.
Lots of boos.
There
were boos as well.
I
was just, are we watching the same program? The whole night was just boo, boo, boo. Any mention of her name, there were boos and there were frustration and there were people who were just not pleased. And it doesn't help when, and I love Sarah, she's a wonderful comedian, but to call 13 million voters ridiculous, I think is an insult and a slap to the Bernie Sanders supporters.
Do you feel that's what she was doing as opposed to saying we have a nominee and it's now time to support that nominee?
Yeah, I think that had the emails not come out and to see that actually there was this collusion between the party and the Hillary Clinton camp, yeah, but in the context of what's happening, I think that was a wrong move. And like I said, she's a comedian, so maybe we'll just take it very lightheartedly. But I don't think that those 13 million supporters will.
We've certainly seen a level of rancor on both sides of the aisle. You're a former registered Democrat. You now, again, support Donald Trump. What was it about his campaign that brought you along?
Well, as an African American, I have voted for 20 years. I voted for the Democrats. And I just think that at some point they have to stop taking advantage and taking for granted the African American voting base. And so I think that that's what's happened. We've had 7 years of a Democratic administration, and yet you still see unemployment, particularly for African-American men under 30 at an all-time high. I'm from Youngstown, Ohio. You don't see jobs. You don't see opportunities. You don't see training. You don't see skills. This is 7 years under a Democratic administration. At some point, you have to go with someone who is going to build the economy for your family, for your community, for your people. And that's why I switched over, and that's why I'm supporting Donald Trump.
The RNC commissioned postmortems following 2008, again 2012, suggesting that they had to make the tent bigger.
Absolutely.
They had to grow the tent. It's been suggested that Donald Trump's candidacy has done anything but. Polls suggest he'll be he can expect some 14% of the Hispanic vote. And with regard to African American voters, at this point, it might be generous to say 2 to 3%.
But that's not what happened
he
in
would
the primary.
need to get to 10%. So how's he going to get to there? How's he going to get to that?
Well, we need to look at what actually happened in the primary, and I think that people, if you look at the actual numbers, not what's projected, the actual numbers, turnout in the South, where Donald Trump was getting 18, 19, 20% of African American vote. Nevada is a great example of how Latinos came out for Donald Trump. 27% that Latinos turned out for Donald Trump. Those are numbers that have actually happened. Those are votes that have been cast, not polls that are projecting what will be done, but what has been done. And so those polls make me very, very optimistic that African Americans and minorities in particular are looking for economic advancement for their communities. They will not be taken for granted any longer by this Democratic Party, and they will vote for Donald Trump in the fall.
But to be fair, those numbers are within the context of a Republican primary. We're talking about a general election. Let's look back at previous Republican nominees who have struggled to bring African American votes to their side for whatever reason. How does Donald Trump expect to do that, to be different in that regard? It's a hard slog for Republican nominees to draw African American voters.
Absolutely, and you're absolutely right. Historically, the RNC has struggled with reaching out to African American voters. And so Donald Trump steps into a party that has already a deficit in that area. And so he has to speak to the issues that African Americans are most concerned about, not issues that we're being told we're concerned about, because I hear very often people saying African American voters are concerned about this or that. Let me tell you what African American voters are concerned about. They're concerned about filling up their gas tank and filling prescriptions. They're concerned about whether or not there's going to be a job to go to the next day, whether or not their jobs are being shipped overseas. And Donald Trump speaks to those issues. When you can build the economy in our community, then you will absolutely have the full attention of the African American community.
Oh, you were recently named the director of African American outreach.
Yes.
And we heard in Cleveland that the campaign would be doing outreach campaigns, tours into the various communities. What can you tell us about that?
Oh, I'm so excited about folks who, not just our plan, but folks who have already reached out to us. We are going to work through traditional grassroots efforts to reach African Americans. We're going to churches, we're going to the beauty shop and the barber shop, but we're also doing very large events as well. We're going to do a wonderful faith-based rally, and I think that those are ways that we can reach African American voters. I think just the gesture of just saying to you, we're not going to call you ridiculous, as it was done last night to the Bernie Sanders supporters, but that you are significant, that you matter, your issues matters, and we are going to address those, and we're going to create policies that will absolutely help to advance African Americans and not see them where we are right now, and we're struggling.
President George W. Bush talked about the soft bigotry.
My little cord has no give.
I'm so sorry. I'll lean forward. The soft bigotry of low expectations. He talked about education reform. We're now talking about jobs and growing those types of things. How do you see that there's any type of policy or things that particular that Trump's talking about that could help communities of color? Is there any one or two things that you think he's really going to galvanize?
Well, the African American Church is a big influence on setting the policy and the priorities for African American voters. And so faith-based issues are very important to the community. But I'm also a graduate of 2 historically black colleges and universities. And so education, of course, is important. But one of the things that I think that you should know that Donald Trump is also concerned about, he's concerned about what's happening between police and African American men in the community. Anytime you wake up and you see officers being shot doing their jobs and you see young men being killed getting traffic stops, then something has to be done. And every day I turn on the news and I am very nervous about what I'm going to see, because the country right now is just so divided and there's so much tension, and we need a true leader that can bring this country together.
But a lot of people have said, that in part the rhetoric of Donald Trump has contributed to that division. They have said that he is racist in that rhetoric, that he is a bigot. You know him personally. You've known him for over a decade.
I've known him for 13 years.
What is it that people either don't know, or what is he like away from that microphone?
Well, let's be very clear. He is not a racist. He addressed racial issues, and people tend to throw around the word racist very loosely. I think it's an assault to African Americans when someone who challenges or addresses issues of race are instantly labeled as racist. So I know him beyond the headlines. I know his heart. He is a kind person. He is compassionate. He is very caring, and he is very concerned about what's happening with the African American community.
You mentioned that personally you know him, and you say you speak highly of his character. We heard family members, friends, co-workers, business associates of him all last week doing that. We're going to hear the same tonight, I think, for Hillary Clinton, character witnesses talking about how great they are. But both of them have high unfavorable numbers. In the case of Trump, what is he not doing in his communication to voters to lower that unfavorable number if all these people who know him say he's this wonderful guy behind the scenes? Well,
it's interesting, because I believe that the other side has been very effective of trying to say these things that are so provocative about Donald and attack him. And meanwhile, they're under, FBI investigation. So to attack his character and you're still being investigated is just kind of mind-boggling. But I will tell you that I'm not really concerned about what people are saying about him, because truly these calls and these accusations didn't come about until he decided to run for president. I mean, 30 million people tuned in every single week to watch us on The Apprentice. No one ever said, oh, I'm not going to watch that racist. I'm not going to watch this person. They tuned in because no one was making those accusations. No one said that about Donald Trump until he decided to go and try to become the leader of the free world.
But he's failing in his communication to voters?
Many of that is very, very baseless to me, and they are just devices of the other side to try to bring Donald Trump's candidacy down.
Is he failing in his communication to voters, though? And that's why we're seeing his unfavorable so high. I understand people are coming after him. This is politics, right?
16, 17 primary candidates. I don't think he's failing.
But that's in the primary. So he's got but he has numbers that suggest that 7 out of 10 Americans feel unfavorably about him. That's a number that's going to have to change to win.
About both of them. So both of them have work to do. That's not something something that is just
Okay,
unique to Donald Trump.
I'm
It is
asking
a
you about
candidate.
Donald Trump work to do. What work does he still have to do?
Oh, he has to let people get to know the true Donald Trump and not this caricature that people have created of him. This idea that he is bigger than life and he doesn't connect to people, because he does. He also has to make very, very clear what he's going to do and how he's going to do it, because the opposite side has been very effective at kind of jumbling when he talks about a wall. We already have a fence that's 2,600 miles on our border. Donald Trump wants to make it bigger and more secure, and that's been convoluted that he wants to keep people out. We already have a fence, and so he has to articulate that and communicate that much more clear to voters so that he can bring them all into the party.
I wish we could keep going, but we do have to leave it there. Omarosa Manigault, we appreciate the
Thank
time.
you.
Leslie, Steve, of course, you're with us all day long here on CBSN.